countrymen and women. I'll start by acknowledging the presence of my colleagues, the members of the Central Committee from the Patriotic Front, Honorable George Sanga, who at the same time is a member of Parliament for Lukasha and the chairperson for the Legal Committee of the Patriotic Front Party. Honorable Mtoto Kwaya, who is also a member of Central Committee and member of Lunte. All of us coming from Northern Province, as Northern Province members of Parliament. We wish to respond to some of the concerns that our people in Northern Province have raised concerning the visit of the Minister of Justice, Honorable Kasune. Leaders called their MPs to wonder what those meetings were about. Honorable Kasune introduced the discussions, or indeed informed the meeting that she was there to collect views concerning the Constitutional Amendment Bill number 7, or indeed submissions to that particular bill. We, as members of Parliament, of how a bill is processed through Cabinet, processes are undertaken, are indeed taken aback as to what the essence of these meetings are. The Honorable Kasune has been collecting submissions from the people of Northern Province, including traditional leaders, meetings which were held at very short notice. And obviously, as a prudent sons and daughters of the soil, they took it upon themselves to consult the members of Parliament and wonder what those meetings were all about. On record, to put it on record, we know that for a bill to come to Parliament, it first of all should have been presented, it must have been presented to Cabinet for principal approval. It was later taken for Cabinet legislation, Cabinet Committee, and later taken back to Cabinet for approval before being published in Government Gazette. Now, if this bill went through all those processes, and today the Minister of Justice wants to go to Northern Province and tell our chiefs, tell the people of Northern Province that she's there to collect their submissions, how does she wish to use those submissions? Because we know that once a bill has been published in Government Gazette and goes through the 30 days, it's those particular clauses in that bill that will be presented to Parliament. If, for instance, our chiefs came up with other proposals, those proposals will not find their way in that particular bill. So the question that begs is, why did Honorable Kasune waste taxpayers' money and started off for Northern Province when she knew very well that the exercise she was undertaking was an academic one? Why did she do that? The people of Northern Province are well informed through their members of Parliament who've been able to explain to them how constitutional amendment processes are supposed to be undertaken. They therefore called to wonder why, in the first place, government and indeed the Minister of Justice did not take heed to the advice that was given by the church. The bishops gave that guidance, Law Association of Zambia and other professional bodies, the ordinary citizens, civil society organizations. When they first announced that they were undertaking this constitutional amendment process, government was advised to abandon that process. The stakeholders called for a broader stakeholder participation. Stakeholders called for a clear roadmap through which these amendments were going to be made. Government instead decided to ignore the calls from all these key stakeholders, including political parties. When the president went round to mention that the intention of amending the constitution was to increase the number of women, participating in governance, and particularly in parliament, youths and people living with disabilities. The president further mentioned that there was need to do delimitation. We asked for the delimitation report. We asked for the technical report because this was an anchor document upon which these amendments were to be made. To date, that document has not been published. And yet the Minister of Justice decided to go all the way to Northern Province to go and discuss with the chiefs, civil servants, and other citizens the issue to do with delimitation, when the only people that are privy to the contents of that report are themselves. What do they expect the people of Northern Province to say? What do they expect them to submit when they have not had sight of the report? Honorable Kasune even went to the extent of giving an example of Kembe as one of the very big constituencies. It's laughable because the people of Northern Province would have expected her to mention constituencies like Shilubi, constituencies like Lukasha, constituencies like Mungwi, as shows in Northern Province. Because even a constituency which is regarded as a small constituency, like in Porokoso, which did not qualify for delimitation under the 2019 report, is actually bigger than Kembe. So how did Honorable Kasune pick on Kembe, which is a very small constituency compared to constituencies like in Porokoso, and yet those constituencies, even in the first report, were not considered? And today, the UPND would like to tell us that what they are bringing out in this amendment number 7 are non-contentious clauses. We said it from the beginning that process protects content. In constitution making, the process of constitution amendment or constitution making is as important as the content. In the first place, we never agreed. We have never agreed with the process that they took to make these amendments. It's a well-known fact that it should not be the executive to come up with proposed amendments. The people themselves are the ones to come up with what they think should change in the constitution or what should be introduced. We know for sure that a constitution is a social contract that sets rules by which people agree to govern themselves. So if this is the case, why is it that it's a UPND that are coming up with the rules to govern the rest of us? The constitution says we, the people of Zambia, give unto ourselves this constitution. It does not say the UPND give unto the Zambians that constitution. We heard for ourselves yesterday, our Bishop Chama from Northern Province, he gave a very clear position, not very different from the one that he gave earlier. And the position is that we cannot leave the process of constitution amendments in the hands of the few. We can't leave it in the hands of the executive. The bishop even wondered why government feels that we all should stand by and be praising them as they go on amending the constitution, believing that they possess all the wisdom that there is. So Minister Kasune, Honorable Kasune, should come back to the president and give a factual report of the views that were submitted by the people in Northern Province. The people in Northern Province, these are ordinary citizens coming from markets, ordinary citizens coming from bus stations. They told Honorable Kasune categorically that it was wrong for her to come now when the process is heading towards the tail end. They wondered why she did not come earlier to consult them, to build consensus, to elicit for participation from these ordinary citizens. These were ordinary citizens that were talking to her. She should make a report to His Excellency the President that what members of Parliament, what the churches, professional bodies were advising us is exactly what the ordinary citizens on the ground are saying. So our submission is that Honorable Kasune's trip to Northern Province, to Apula, and wherever he should want to go, is a waste of taxpayers' money. In Bemba tulando okuti basensire lokawa. Ero twale beba bakasuni okuti bane kabiye ni kubantu abantu balamyeba ifi alaisa mu lupapulo. Olupapulo lwachalo abapanga bantu kanchite timo balile kwe mwingo obuteeko nimwe mwalande fi alachinja ele muye ku bantu. And for sure our fears regarding this particular bill were confirmed on the 23rd of May when the bill was published. All the clauses in Constitutional Amendment Bill number 7 are frightening. Citizens are concerned. It's very difficult and hard to imagine that our leaders, men and women, sitting in cabinet, were able to approve those clauses that are contained in Constitutional Amendment Bill number 7 with a view that it should come to Parliament for enactment. It's really, really frightening. So, countrymen and women, I will invite my friends to come in and add to that. Mine was basically to highlight the concerns that our people in Northern Province have raised, and also to pass a message to Honorable Kasune, because the notice that was given was just an hour or minutes. Many people were not able to attend. The message that is coming from Northern Province through us, members of Parliament, is that members of the public or citizens in Northern Province vehemently object to this particular bill. They demand that this process be abandoned, and that the same way Honorable Kasune was able to go to the people yesterday, she should now go and start from there so that they can get views of our traditional leaders and what their aspirations are, what they would want, to be contained in the Constitution, so that a proper social contract can then be executed, one that to set rules by which the people of Northern Province will agree to govern themselves alongside people from other provinces within Zambia. So this is the message that is coming from Northern Province, both from the general citizenry and indeed traditional leaders. They found it very disturbing that the minister went there to ask them to make submissions, and yet those submissions will have no effect on the bill that has already been published. So, Minister Kasune, if at all you intend to visit other provinces, our humble advice would be that please save taxpayers' money. That exercise you are carrying out is an academic exercise. It will bear no fruit. It will have no effect whatsoever. But at the same time, I would like to implore you to take into account the submissions the people of Northern Province made, the concerns the chiefs raised, and particularly over the process that this Constitutional Amendment Bill number 7 is undergoing. May I call upon my dear brother, Honorable George Sanga, to deliver his address.
Thank you, Leader of Opposition. I've actually been tasked to deal with a matter that is quite divorced from constitutional making. We need to respond to the issues that have been raised by the press concerning a threat that has been voiced by one senior leader of the UPND against the three of us. But before I go into the little press statement that we have written, I just also want to echo some remarks that Honorable Munduvire has said concerning the constitutional making that is being driven by the UPND government. The only point I want to make is to call upon this government to accord some minimum respect for the stakeholders, even as they go around, purporting to be canvassing views about what should be or should not be in the proposed Bill number 7 of 2025. I can attest, honourable members, that I don't know about yourselves, but I, as Member of Parliament for Lukasha constituency, received a letter inviting me to this meeting that was convened by the Minister of Justice. I received the letter dated 27th May under the hand of the Permanent Secretary for Northern Province, inviting me to go for that meeting on the 28th of May. This is a problem when you have a government that is working like an octopus, but whose left hand does not know what the right hand is doing. You know, the time I received that letter, I was still in committee tours on behalf of Parliament, and so were all the members of Parliament that are on the backbench. Committees have been on tour, and if genuinely the government would have wanted us to participate in this canvassing on the constitution making, they should have read the timetable of Parliament. They should have sent us invitations in due time to be able to make it, to go and participate in the deliberations that were taking place in Kasama yesterday. I respectively took an opportunity to write back to provincial administration and offer my regrets that I wasn't going to be able to make it for that meeting, because I was at that time just returning from my final tour on behalf of the National Assembly. You know, despite receiving the letter from me saying I wasn't going to come for that meeting, it was announced in the meeting that I had indicated that I was going to participate in that meeting by Zoom link. You know, when you have to do engagements with the public, you must have some degree of decency. It only helps. So, you know, and the feedback I've received from Rukasha constituency by the stakeholders who went to attend that meeting is frightening, because you don't even call that a consultation. You don't even call that a stakeholder engagement. Firstly, there was no, you know, decorum in that meeting. Secondly, there was no direction in what was going on in that meeting. And thirdly, government was just vacillating. They were not even hearing the views from the people. People wanted to speak to the government and voice their disagreement with the proposal that they have to table this amendment to the Constitution in Parliament at this time. All those views were not heard. Now, you don't consider that stakeholder consultation. Like Honorable Munduvire has said, you cannot make a constitution in such a controversial environment and push it under the throats of people, even when they're telling you you have come at the wrong time. I would like to urge the government to listen to what the Bishop of the Archbishop of Kasama Diocese, Archbishop Chama said. You know, he has repeated what he has said in April, that the timing and the content of what is contained in this bill, and even just what the UPND is going, how the UPND is going about trying to amend this constitution, it does not accord with the expectations and aspirations of the Zambian people. If this is a listening government, it is time for them to listen and abandon this process. What is happening now is the UPND trying to manage the government in a manner which is akin to staging a coup d'etat using constitutional amendments. Because how is it possible that when everybody else in the country has said it is inappropriate for us to go about this program, those who are driving the process still want to insist to do it? On whose behalf are they doing it? The Constitution itself, you know, classifies itself as a document of the people. If it can't be demonstrated that there was wider stakeholder consultation, you know, from the people from various sectors of society, you can't go ahead and amend the Constitution. But the stubbornness with which UPND, you know, is proceeding to try and amend this Constitution is astounding. It's frightening. If they are a listening government, it is time to abandon this process and allow the country to be managed using the Constitution that was amended in 2016 until after at least the election. Coming to my brief press statement that we've prepared, you know, our attention was yesterday drawn to an article in the New Diggers publication of the 27th of May 2025, in which the Minister of Information and Government spokesperson has alleged that myself, you know, Honorable Munduvire and Honorable Kafwa must be subjected to some form of investigation and possible prosecution because, according to him, we were aiding and abetting the crimes which allegedly were committed, you know, by Honorable Maureen Mabonga as well as Honorable Munia Zulu. If we were living in a country where everything is normal and usual, we would have been minded to dismiss these provocative remarks by Mr. Mwaitwa as inconsequential and child's play, and not to attribute any of our responses to these remarks. However, on the realization that we now live in a country which is a deceptive construct, where decency has been overtaken by indecency, where lies have taken upon themselves the form of the truth, and the truth has lost its value, where wrongdoers who enjoy privileges that come with incumbency elect to attack and vilify innocent citizens without fear of any recrimination, and where a provocative statement uttered by a privileged individual such as Honorable Mwetwa can set into motion a dramatized arrests, investigations, prosecutions, and even convictions of otherwise innocent citizens, we find ourselves bound to a collective duty to state our position in response to the unprovoked attacks to which we've been subjected by Mr. Mwetwa. Firstly, we wish to register our disavowal of the manner in which Mr. Mwetwa has decided to subject Honorable Mabonga and Honorable Zulu to slander. We find these remarks in relation to the two highly inappropriate and unfortunate. While the larger section of our country is sympathetic to the plight of these two members of parliament, it is very unfortunate that Mr. Mwetwa has found himself an opportunity to vilify the two leaders who lost their seats in very controversial circumstances. We, like many other Zambians, hold the view that our colleagues did nothing for which they should have been prosecuted or even sentenced and sent to jail. While we have held our views on this verdict of the court, which we have not voiced publicly out of the respect we have for the legal system and for due process of the law, our expectations was that Mr. Mwetwa should have elected to enjoy the excitement out of these convictions in silence, as opposed to using his important role and office to humiliate the members of parliament. In regard to his veiled instructions to the police to take action against us, we must state categorically that we find these statements unfortunate, provocative, and misplaced. The police, whose standing has now been brought under critical scrutiny by the public, must be left to operate professionally without any undue influence from privileged politicians. Mr. Mwetwa must not use his temporal trappings of power to give instructions directly or indirectly to the police, which does not even fall under the ambit of his ministerial mandate. As confirmed by himself, Mr. Mwetwa is both an ex-police officer as well as a lawyer. He is better positioned to know how to conduct himself when speaking of and about institutions which were created to advance and foster the rule of law. We are also very perturbed by the attack Mr. Mwetwa meted out on Ms. Linda Kasonde, the former last president and now the president of Chapter 1 Foundation in Zambia, in responding to her views on Bill 10. The country must be reminded that Ms. Kasonde worked hand in hand with the UPND government when they were in opposition, in opposing Bill 10, which was a negotiated document among the Patriotic Front, the UPND, and other stakeholders. We take the view that Ms. Kasonde is accordingly the best suited person to share with the public her opinion in drawing comparisons between Bill 10 and Bill 7. In responding to Mrs. Kasonde at the material time, the Patriotic Front did not resort to use of such demeaning terms as mind-shattering or just a way of opposing government, because this is not the first government that Ms. Kasonde has decided to criticize. We expected Mr. Mwetwa, as government spokesperson, to use civil language and convincing reason in disagreeing with someone who shared the same opinion with the UPND when they were in opposition. This trend of increasing attacks on people who do not share the same views with government by senior UPND members is very worrisome, and it must be kept in check by the public. We would therefore like to call on Mr. Mwetwa to use his important role as government spokesperson in a manner that inspires confidence, as opposed to increasing the gaps between those who disagree with this government and those who don't. We also appeal to Mr. Mwetwa that hatred does not build any society. It is love which builds society. We've been subjected to all manner of hatred, all manner of slur language by Mr. Mwetwa and other senior members of the UPND simply because we're in the opposition. This is not a country that we wanted to build for ourselves, or indeed a country that was fought for by our forefathers. We're supposed to live in a country which cherishes the principle of one Zambia, one nation. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So Honorable Mtotoka Foya will be our next speaker.
Yeah, thank you so much for the opportunity, Honorable Tsanga, Honorable Mondowile, and my colleagues from the media. I think after the comprehensive statement has been offered by Honorable Tsanga, it remains for me to just say a few things. First, by saying this is the infamous Bill 7, National Assembly Bill 7 of 2025. This bill has been submitted or has been gazetted for onward transmission to the National Assembly of Zambia for enactment. Now, that means the executive arm of government has finished its work. They have done everything. They have made their, what they think are their consultations, and they have gone through the bill at all levels. This bill must have been drafted in the Ministry of Justice, so it must have gone through internal legislation. And then there is a committee of ministers who should scrutinize, under normal circumstances that is, who should scrutinize a bill before it goes back to cabinet for final approval. So I'm assuming this bill has been scrutinized by that committee of ministers called the Cabinet Legislative Committee, and that committee of ministers found that this is a good bill, and therefore it needed to be sent to cabinet, full cabinet for approval. And this bill went to cabinet, and cabinet approved it and sent it for publication and onward transmission to the National Assembly for enactment. That means the only job that remains for the executive is for the president to sign this, this bill once it passes Parliament. And thereafter, this becomes part of the Constitution. So, to just remind you that Honorable Mundubile was talking about the Minister of Justice in Northern Province making consultations. The question you are going to ask is, what are those consultations for? Because the bill is already published. The bill has been completed. Why are you consulting? That is deception. I put it to you that that is deception, and it's a total waste of government resources. Because those consultations you are making, where are you going to take them? The bill is already approved by cabinet. The bill is already published. The next thing, it has to go to a parliamentary committee. And the executive cannot make consultations on behalf of parliament. Unless you are saying now anybody can consult and you feed into another system, and that system, the executive can never make consultations on behalf of Parliament. Parliament will appoint its own committee. That committee will select its own stakeholders, and those stakeholders will submit to this. So I find this exercise by the Honourable Minister of Justice as deception, the usual deception from the UPND, and also waste of public resources. You need to minimize on that. The other thing I would like to comment about is the arrogance of the UPND. I think it's gone, out of the roof. You see, personally, I have complained about the amount of arrogance that the UPND government has demonstrated. Look, everybody rejected the cyber bills. Today, those cyber bills have become law. They are now Cyber Crimes Act and Cyber Security Act. Everyone rejected them. But this is exactly, and it began very, very small. With the other time I complained about the budgeting process, where the entire budget for 2025, January to December, only one member of parliament was allowed to debate. What type of accountability is that? Only Stephen Kampiong was allowed to debate the budget for the whole country for the whole year. What type of accountability is that? But it has still gone. Now we have come to the Constitution. Here we are. The Constitution amendments has been rejected overwhelmingly by all critical stakeholders, but we are sitting with a bill. So I think this arrogance will be responded to when time comes. But looking at this same bill and maybe responding to what the Honourable Minister Honorable Cornelius Muita said regarding the comparison between this bill and Bill 10, where he said the Bill 10, attempted to introduce deputy ministers. Now, deputy ministers and 42 people who are going to parliament without an election. You see, if you have 30 ministries, as the case is now, that is the max you can have according to this constitution. And then you introduce deputy ministers in some of the ministries and not all of them. You are certainly going to have less than 30 deputy ministers. But this bill is actually going to produce 42 people who go to parliament not through election, but through just being told that yiwe kabye ku parliament, yiwe kabye ku parliament, twashako mwana banani go to parliament. So you have a situation where 42 people will find their way into parliament without being elected by anyone. Now, what is the role of parliament? Constitutionally, it is representation. Members of parliament represent their people. So these 42, who will they be representing? Somebody is going to come up and say, no, proportional representation means the party will choose people to go to parliament according to how much they scored, in an election. But yes, National Assembly is not there to represent party positions. The members of parliament there do not represent party position. They represent the position of their electorate. So about 42 represent parliament. These are completely non-functional. Completely non-functional. But the minister had the audacity to compare deputy ministers to these unfunctional positions. It's very, very unfortunate. I think we have over-talked about these 42 plus 55 new constituencies, giving you 97 people who are going to be added to that body of parliament, and the cost implications. So the question the people will ask is, what is in there for us as people? What is it? All this is just leaders, creating leadership positions everywhere. And you have forgotten that these same leaders are going to be paid for by the people, by the taxpayers, who are already overburdened with the tax, tax liabilities that they have to pay government right now. So, UPND, you are not thinking for the people, you are thinking for yourselves. I'll tell you one other very unfortunate way you are thinking about yourself in terms of what you have put in this bill. You are saying that all these 211 people, 211 plus the 42, all these people are going to stay in parliament, or should I say, they are going to continue getting paid even after parliament is dissolved. Now, what kind of thinking is that, to be honest? What type of thinking is that? Parliament is dissolved. Mwaba MP nchito yapwa werere nimo kabye ni campaign ku bantu beno. Mpaka abantu beno bakayesumina cho bakafaya mwali bombere bwerere nimo nangu batsanga muri ba umesana mundu bire tulemi bwekeshamo. 3 months that is given for campaign. At no akakeneka 3 months ba MP bakalafola. They will be getting paid. What type of people are you? In constitutional corruption, that's constitutional corruption. It is wrong to make people pay for leaders who are not working. It is immoral. UPND, begin to think for people for once. Start to think about your people. This is thinking about yourselves, and it is wrong. It is very wrong. The process is completely bad. Even the content, there is literally nothing here. There is nothing here which you can say is for the people. Completely nothing. And this is why I'm saying, for once, begin to think for people. Now, I intended to end here, but let me just say one more thing, just one more thing. You see, this bill is saying, ababa Attorney General, naba Solicitor General, ababa, they have their identity. Once HH loses elections, another president wins elections, and then HH hands over power peacefully, and that power transitions to the new president. This bill is saying that the Solicitor General, the Attorney General, they should not leave office until the other people are sworn, are employed in those positions. Now, my question is, the Attorney General, that is an advisor to the president. Why should an advisor to the president remain in the office when the president, who was comfortable with his advisors, gone? The new president may not be comfortable with the advice of an existing Attorney General. Okay, because yeah, of course, the Attorney General may be seen as somebody who offers wrong advice. For example, right now we have a situation where some people in the Ministry of Justice have been accused of corruption, even by Dr. Kaba Tunza there. This man is corrupt, this one, and I can prove the corruption. Now, the president goes, he leaves that person behind for another person who doesn't want corruption. What type? For me, I'm confused. I'm totally confused. Now, those are your advisors as the existing president. Go with them so that the one who is coming can come and put his own advisors. If he wants, he can call those same people. Or if she wants, she can call those same people to come and continue advising in that regard. I think that if my elections, leaders, and high positions, this is where I find this. I'm sorry, Zambian people. I'm really sorry. This is a fraud. This is a total fraud. The people of Zambia must reject this bill. I will reject it. And I call upon the people to reject it too. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Just to recap, before the leader of opposition closes, I also want to just discuss two issues that I think are also key for Zambians to look at. You know, the UPND, from the time they started talking about this proposed amendment, what they sold to the Zambians was something that has turned out, to be deception, as has been stated by Honorable Kafwa. We were told that the intention to amend this constitution was with the quest to amend what are called non-controversial clauses in the constitution, and also to harvest what they called the low-hanging fruits. I had stated at one time that this is the only government that has found in the constitution clauses that it describes as non-controversial. I had said at the beginning that in the Constitution, everything from the first word to the last word is controversial. This is why we even set up a constitutional court under this constitutional setting that we have, because people expect that there will be difference of opinion on how you read into this constitution and what meaning each clause in the constitution imparts. But here is some two clauses that I also found rather controversial that I would like Zambians to interrogate even further. The first one has to do with by-elections. It has been suggested that in a bid to save money, public funds, even when they are going to bloat parliament by increasing the number of parliamentarians, they are suggesting that there should not be a by-election when a member of parliament either dies or resigns from office and there's a requirement for that person to be replaced. And you see how deceptive the UPND has been operating. At the beginning, they suggested that it is a person who would have polled number 2 who would then be allowed to ascend to the office of the member of parliament or probably councillor, as the case may be. But if you've seen the provision they've brought in the draft, it is now being suggested that the political party whose member was a member of parliament, if he dies, would then just have to pick from amongst themselves one of them and bring him to parliament to come and finish the work. Our argument with that is that is the most undemocratic way of replacing leadership. Because even if Mr. Chisanga or Mr. Mundubire was sponsored by the Patriotic Front to go to parliament, or Mr. Kafwa, The very fact that Mr. Kabofaya had an opportunity to canvass with the people and voice his views and get the people's views on how to run the office of a member of parliament is the reason why they elected him. In that parliament, even if we belong to political parties, we represent constituents, people who vote for us in parliament. And therefore, if anything happens that requires for a member of parliament to be replaced, the best way to replace that member of parliament is to go to the people themselves who put him in power and ask that there should be another election. This is why the current constitution provides for a by-election if something like that happens. But the UPND are suggesting rather controversially that they should allow for, a person who is in office, or a party whose person is in office, to nominate one of them and put him in office without another election. Now, this raises so many issues which can be discussed here, but one of them that you can raise is the issue of, if, for instance, we don't like Honorable Tsanga in Patriotic Front, and we decide we're going to have him kicked out of Parliament, and he's kicked out, why should we move away from democracy by allowing people to come and vote, by suggesting only that since we've replaced Mr. Tsanga, we're going to pick one of our members again and make him member of parliament in there? That person will have no legitimacy amongst the voters. That person will not actually have been constitutionally placed in government. So they are actually undoing the constitutional democracy that we put in place in 2016 by suggesting these very draconian provisions of the Constitution. The other one, which I'll just speak for under a minute, is the qualification for secretary to the cabinet. It is shocking that, you can even suggest that we should reduce the years of experience for somebody to qualify to be secretary to cabinet to 5 years instead of 10 years. And you see, because they are not enacting this constitution with the interest of the Zambian people at heart, but with a view to achieving a parochial, a target that they have for themselves to start controlling the civil service by controlling the secretary cabinet, they've actually forgotten that in this very constitution they are amending, it requires 10 years for somebody to qualify to become a judge. It requires 10 years for somebody to qualify to be appointed the Attorney General. It requires 10 years for somebody to be appointed the Solicitor General. It requires, I think, 10 years for somebody to be appointed the Auditor General of experience. So you can't be appointed for, if you have any less than 10 years experience in all these very important positions in the Constitution. But because their target was the Secretary to Cabinet and have no idea for what reason, you can only speculate. Why have they targeted only the Secretary to the Cabinet as one whose qualifications they must water down, with the intention for them to be able to open it up for their cadres? They would like now the civil service to be controlled by a cadre. The difficulty that we've got with the current civil service is because most of the permanent secretaries are actually appointed on political patronage. And they have failed to discharge their functions because experienced civil servants have not been allowed to ascend to these very important offices. The Zambians who are interrogating this constitution might look at this proposal very, very well and even consult those who have worked as permanent secretaries before in the country. There are many of them. And all of you Zambians who have worked as permanent secretaries, it's time for you to stand up now. Come and voice why this clause must remain undisturbed, because our colleagues would like to politicize the whole civil service and make it collapse even further, because right now civil service has collapsed. Every public service, that under the UPND has totally collapsed. This is just going to make it worse. But because they are targeting, a political interest rather than a national interest, which is why you see these kind of controversial clauses being put in the proposed amendment, and people are just being informed rather than being given an opportunity to consult on them. I thought I'd just make that mention, did a proposition before I give you the microphone to conclude. Thank you very much.
Yes, I'll just conclude under a minute. Honorable Kafuaya raised the UPND. I think council or through CDF without increasing the number of MPs. As Comrade Sanga pointed out, it's been pure deception. The President talked about increasing the number of women and youths in Parliament. What they're suggesting in that bill does not necessarily increase the number of women and youths in Parliament. For all you care, you have 211 elective positions. What if the men win all those 211? Meaning you're going to only have 11 seats of women in that Parliament. Now look at percentages. Look at the current percentages compared to what it would be if it turned out to be like that. You will agree with me that even if a few of our female members of Parliament do win elections, given that the total number of constituencies has been increased, in terms of percentage, we may not achieve above 17% that we have currently. So the President made this to be one of the major reasons, but you can clearly see that it was total deception, because the actual number of women that will be represented in Parliament will not go up in real terms. So we'll come back to you to look at all these clauses. Tomorrow, I think we will be facing the press again, where we'll now delve into individual clauses to expose them for what they are. And indeed, the attempt that the UPND has to try and dilute our constitutional democracy. And as a matter of fact, you can see from these clauses that the UPND has something bigger that it has planned for our country. Clearly not to defend our constitutional democracy, but indeed to destroy it, as it were. But to come back to you and analyze these clauses, close. Thank you very much for your attention.